Hello and welcome back to Pearl Magazine. In 2019, 376 tons of wildlife, including pangolin scales and ivory, were seized in Hong Kong. It's equivalent to almost a third of what was seized by mainland customs that same year. Ambrose Lee finds out what needs to be done to help tackle this global issue.
Now we're at the bird market, Yuen Po Street in Mongkok. You can see that here there are hundreds of species of songbirds and parrots and so on.
Astrid Anderson, a PhD student in wildlife trade and urban ecology at the University of Hong Kong, is visiting the bird market to see what's being sold here as part of her research. She noticed a particularly high number of one species, the Oriental magpie robin.
This bird is protected in some areas of its geographic range, which is spread across large swathes of Asia.
She says they could still be traded as long as they came from parts of the continent where they are not protected.
However, because they don't have species level codes and information, we don't know where they're coming from. They're just traded under other birds alongside many other species.
Astrid says the lack of these levels of codes and information for a species is not unique to birds. It exists in other wildlife trade such as seafood and exotic pets.
Across many different types of wildlife trade, this is an issue where the traders and the consumers and the authorities don't have the information to really know what they're selling or buying.
Without such information, it's very easy for species to be traded at high volumes for a lucrative return. This invites others to enter the trade and could threaten the population of a particular species in the wild.
And that can lead to populations collapsing. And that's a situation in which we can lose species, in some cases even before they've been identified and described by scientists.
In addition to bird markets, seafood markets and traditional Chinese medicine shops are places where the public could come across wildlife products with unknown sources. With high volumes of containers and goods going through Hong Kong's ports every day, the territory is also a major entrepot for illegal wildlife trade. Government data show that 655 metric tons of wildlife valued at 207 million Hong Kong dollars were seized in 2018 and 2019.
Hong Kong's one of the major wildlife trafficking hubs in the world. It is the gateway into China, which has a lot of demand for wildlife products. It's often used as a transshipment point for illegal wildlife as well to other parts of Asia.
David Olson works for a global conservation NGO that has been trying to curb the illegal wildlife trade. He says the amount of wildlife products moved through Hong Kong has dramatically increased over the last few years as the trade became incredibly lucrative due to soaring global demand.
Illegal wildlife trade is estimated to be worth 20 to 30 billion US dollars a year. It is the fourth most lucrative illegal trade after humans and drugs and arms. So it is a very serious business. It's run by organized crime syndicates, which are international in scope.
The global trend of illegal wildlife trade is reflected in Hong Kong as well.
Well, over the last 10 years, the estimated profits from illegal wildlife is 1,600%. Hong Kong is now estimated to traffic about 50% of the global volumes of pangolin scale, mainly into China for the pharmaceutical company stockpiles. We've seen a big increase in the types of species being trafficked as well. And that, I think, is largely due to greater demand from the exotic pet trade.
Currently, illegal wildlife trade isn't considered an organized and serious crime in Hong Kong, meaning enforcement authorities do not have the powers to carry out necessary investigations to isolate syndicates behind the smuggling that are making millions of dollars.
Treating wildlife crime as organised and serious crime would be an absolute game changer for Hong Kong. It would put us in compliance with the United Nations call
for this to be treated in that way. It would ensure that our investigators had the power to call in persons of interest, to find out the pieces of information that are necessary in order to do appropriate investigative work, to follow the money trails, to deal with overseas countries that are also trying to crack down on transnational crime, and to target the masterminds that are behind this very, very lucrative, low-risk form of crime.
Professor Amanda Whitford teaches law at the University of Hong Kong and specializes in the illegal wildlife trade. She says the highest penalty that Hong Kong has seen for the smuggling or the trafficking of endangered species was 32 months for repackaging pangolin scales to ship to China.
Whereas if you look at the sentences for dangerous drugs, even very small amounts of dangerous drugs are punished with much higher penalties. If you were found trafficking 8, 9, 10 grams of cocaine in Hong Kong, you'd be likely to go to jail for 5 years. Dangerous drugs are something that can be manufactured. They're something that are not important to society. Endangered species surely are, and yet the sentences that we're seeing are still far too low.
The Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department told Pearl magazine that more stringent penalties of the Protection of Endangered Species of Animals and Plants Ordinance were introduced in May 2018. The department says the sentence for illegally exporting around 3 kilograms of incense tree wood chips was increased from about 4 weeks of imprisonment to 2 years. And the sentence for illegally importing around 3 kilograms of rhino horns was increased from about 2 weeks of imprisonment to 8 months.
The prosecutions normally is only about the mills. Take a case in 2018. So about the Rosewood case. In her convictions, the defendants mentioned that she got the money to allow the illegal shipment use her phone numbers and address. But only she been prosecuted for 3 months, but none of the kingpins was prosecuted in the case.
J.V. Chan, who works with David Olson, says the arrests are too few and far between, even for the mules.
In 2018, 2019, 19 of the cases are through the sea cargo to come to Hong Kong. But as we can see, only 7 were arrested and only 1 successfully prosecuted. Just like the 2019, we can see the largest pangolin scale species is around 8.3 metric tons of the pangolin scales come to Hong Kong. And then no prosecutions.
From a bird, either a tail or a wing feather, preferably. Then we take a sample from the center,
which is then put into a small metal cup, sealed and weighed before putting into a machine for analysis.
So the nitrogen peak is much lower than the carbon peak. That can be used to show if an animal has been consuming a diet that is a characteristically wild diet or one that is a captivity-based diet.
At the University of Hong Kong's Conservation Forensics Laboratory, scientists are performing different experiments to identify specific species, such as a DNA test on dried geckos to trace their origin. The goal is to use forensics to expedite enforcement.
Our recent research did show is there's very little information about what's being sold in the markets, be that dried seafood or bird market, pet market, especially when it comes to reptiles, birds, fish. So by using these tools and helping the authorities to identify species, where they've come from, whether they're captive or wild, that's helping them to be able to have more of a clear idea of what's being traded and what's going on and whether it needs to be improved or penalized.
Their research shows wildlife products are shipped under an international coding system, which is very loose and broad. A good example is that 90% of the songbird species are categorized as other birds.
These codes are actually not designed to track wildlife trade. They're designed to track all commodity trade. So everything from refrigerators to timber to everything. So they weren't designed with this particular purpose in mind, and which is part of the reason why they're not so specific. If there's a possibility to refine some of these codes and make some of the codes more species specific, we can improve our ability to track trade.
The facial markings on the juveniles are already quite distinct and complex, so it can be used to distinguish individuals.
Some species, such as humped wrasse, could be even identified down to the individual using this AI facial recognition app. The better the species are identified, the better the tracking, and the better the enforcement. Both Caroline and Astrid say stricter enforcement in Hong Kong would make a huge difference in the global trade.
We've got species coming here from other places in the region and Southeast Asia, but also from Africa, from South America, from North America, you name it. We've got species coming through here. So being able to prevent that from happening would really have a big knock-on effect for trade globally.
Hong Kong is an area that is a relatively small territory, but among the top 20 traders of wildlife. So it functions as sort of a bottleneck or a concentration point for international wildlife trade. So if you invest in enforcement and monitoring here, you get the best return on your investment in terms of monitoring the international wildlife trade.
When we come back, how Hong Kong's sleepless can get a good night's sleep. Stay with us. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. Getting a good night's sleep can feel as elusive as winning the lottery for many people, especially in a high-stress city like Hong Kong. Experts say we're supposed to spend a third of our lives recharging through sleep, but in today's world of 24/7 connectivity to work and play, that's easier said than done. Kana Chu talks to a few experts who hope to help the city's sleepless souls.
Hong Kong is a city on the go. Take a pause and you could miss an opportunity. This means longer working hours and less time recharging. Kevin Chan, a sleep specialist, calculates that if we live 80 years and 1/3 of them is meant for sleep, that's a total of 230,000 hours we should be spending in dreamland.
But what if that person couldn't actually sleep that much? If I were able to identify that and actually help that person to get to where they need to be without getting the 8 hours sleep, we could be talking about 25,000 hours. And my only question is this: why wouldn't you want to actually have that 25,000 hours back? And that translates to almost 3 years of your life.
Kevin hopes to be part of the solution for those wanting more sleep. Tucked away in one of the world's busiest cities is a sleep shrine for high performers. For the price of a set lunch in Central or Wan Chai, you can catch some Z's inside this award-winning sleep capsule made of pine.
Professionals, entrepreneurs, peak performers, urban dwellers, and creatives. So they come here, take a 1 hour nap, pay for $130. But what they are really aiming for is the performance after the nap. They could go back, close the insurance deal, or perform at the presentation.
They can drift off, surrounded by nature, in the breeze, or even by a trickling stream at any time of the day.
The peak hours for our nappers are between 12 to 1, because that's the lunchtime. I've seen customers actually taking 2 stops of MTR station to take a 45 minutes nap.
With an adjustable lighting, sound, and cooling system to create the perfect environment, a sensor under the mattress collects sleep data. This includes heart rate, breathing rate, metabolism, and more.
From the data, we can see how much REM sleep he's having, or how much deep sleep he's having. You can see the percentage. If we see that this person have a short deep sleep stage, then we'll try to give him some advice.
Nesty, a consultant and headhunter from the Philippines, has been under a lot of stress as he's separated from his family who live in Manila. The country's cases have recently topped 1 million, with deaths edging close to 20,000, and it's back in lockdown.
It's like not the best time to be there, and I think it stresses me a lot because of its potential impact on my family and my family's health, and maybe that's what's been, I guess, literally keeping me up at night.
During his consultation, he realized it wasn't just stress that was keeping him up. He had a more serious health issue, sleep apnea, a condition where one stops breathing while sleeping. It can be life-threatening if left untreated.
There were certain times of the night where I feel like I would wake up from, let's say, maybe a bad dream or something, and I would be gasping for air. But I didn't really find meaning into it until actually I am seeing off of a chart or off of data that there are a few seconds or even a few minutes of my sleep where my oxygen saturation goes below 90%, even going as low as 85%. The normal oxygen saturation of a person is 95%. And I'm afraid of that, to be honest.
Nesty says he's planning to see a doctor for this. With 24/7 connectivity, it can be tough to clock off from work, particularly with the new flexible work-from-home arrangements, which have grown during the pandemic and are likely to remain in place as the new normal.
People found it difficult to differentiate their work and also their family life or their workspace versus their rest space. And often that could also affect our sleep. About 30 to 40% of people in Hong Kong report that their sleep was worse during pandemic. The most common sleep problems include insomnia, difficulty falling asleep, difficulty maintaining sleep, early morning awakening, and sleep deprivation.
Dr. Shirley Lee, head of the Sleep Research Clinic and Laboratory at HKU, says lack of sleep can contribute to depression, anxiety, which in turn result in poor work performance. According to Mind HK, 1 in 4 Hong Kong workers suffer symptoms of depression and anxiety, 2.5 times the global average, and around 18% require psychological treatment. Their study also shows that Hong Kong has one of the longest working hours in the world, at 51.1 hours a week, in addition to almost 40% working 4 to 8 hours overtime each week. A study by RAND, an American think tank, revealed that showing up to work when feeling tired or ill can come with a huge economic price tag. Based on a loss of 2% of GDP for developed countries, this equates to roughly $7.1 billion of lost productivity here in Hong Kong.
In terms of a company, I think about $2,000 per employee per month. That is a number from the US. In Hong Kong, I would say probably even more, because the awareness of the importance of sleep is even less.
The daily average of Z's one gets in Hong Kong is 6.5 hours, topping the ranks as one of the most overworked populations in the world.
Probably because of this 24/7 culture, like non-stop culture. People value working hard, playing hard, but they don't really value the importance of sleep.
For the past several years, studies from AIA's Healthy Living Index survey show the city has also gained top spot as the least healthy place in Asia, with sleep sufficiency and effective stress management among the determining factors.
Sleep and stress have a bi-directional relationship. So when we are stressed, when we have difficulties in regulating our moods, we may find it difficult to fall asleep, and we struggle with having quality sleep. And on the other hand, when we are not having adequate sleep, it also affects our stress level. It makes it more likely for us to feel stress, to feel worried, and to feel depressed.
Lack of sleep, poor work performance, stressing out about it, and losing sleep over it becomes a vicious cycle. The journey to true restfulness begins with adopting good habits.
We suggest people to maintain a regular sleep schedule that's helpful for our biological clock.
So it seems Benjamin Franklin's famous saying, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, has some truth to it. According to sleep experts, there are 4 types of sleepers. The bear, who typically sleeps around 10 p.m. and wakes at 7 a.m., the lion, who sleeps early and rises early, the wolf, who stays up late into the night and sleeps in, and the dolphin, who struggles to follow any set schedule. Once we identify which type of sleeper we are, we can better set our sleeping schedule. Nesty is a dolphin, and roughly 10% of the population are dolphins. This group are light sleepers, sensitive to light and noise, and wake up sporadically to worry. They are prone to restlessness and are the most productive mid-morning to early afternoon.
It would be helpful to have some time before bedtime. You try to do some relaxing activity to help yourself wind down and do it regularly.
Kevin gives Nesty some exercises to help him relax.
Try to do this during the daytime. We need to work on your diaphragmatic breath and just do your normal breathing right now. Just breathe. Where do you see the most movements coming from?
My chest.
Chest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should it be more like from the stomach?
Thank you. You got it. You got it.
Let's go on this journey together.
Kevin considers himself a personal trainer for sleep.
In the beginning, I thought teaching people how to sleep, it sounded ridiculous. Sleep is a very personal journey, just like food plans and exercise. Everyone has their own personalizations.
To improve sleep quality, he says there are 6 pillars to follow: dietary habits, exercise, lifestyle management, sleep environment, mental wellness, as well as supplementation or biohacking, the practice of modifying our biology through science and self-experimentation. He says that making them part of our daily routine improves sleep effectiveness and efficiency, boosting our physical and mental performance during our waking hours. What about the 8-hour rule?
One of my clients, she told me that, I had pretty good night of sleep, 8 hours. If you really look at it, it's only about 6 hours. It's about 25%. It's a lot of toss and turning. What if I can actually do something with this person's sleeping protocol and increase the efficiency from 75% to 85 to even 90%? That would mean that person doesn't even need to sleep that long anymore.
And the last ingredient in the recipe for better sleep and productivity:
I want them to have that control back. The first thing that they can achieve really is the cognitive performance. They were able to not rely on that cup of coffee. Number 2 is the determinations.
Armed with this knowledge, we can begin our journey to that good night's rest.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. Next week, we take a look at how the art market is faring amidst the pandemic. Are virtual viewings enough? See you then. Good night.